The origins of the modern naval base of Sevastopol can be traced back to the 18th century. From 1768 to 1774, Russia was at war with the Turkish Ottoman Empire. At the time, Crimea was ruled by the Crimean kings, vassals of the Turks. Russia's victory over Turkey brought Ukraine, the North Caucasus, and Crimea into the Russian Empire. The Russian Navy now had direct access to the Black Sea and freedom to explore the Crimean coastline. The Black Sea coast from Balaclava to the Belbek River Valley can easily be compared in beauty to a Mediterranean coastal resort. A navigator of the Russian Navy named Ivan Baturin was the first to visit this area in 1773. He informed the Russian command of his discovery of the ancient ruins of Inkerman, with its well-preserved walls, towers, and caves in the mountains overlooking a large bay. To the west of Inkerman, Baturin found a small Tatar village called Akhtiyar, while the bay itself was referred to as Akhtiyar Bay. In June of 1778, Lieutenant General Alexander Suvorov brought the first ships and troops to Akhtiyar Bay and began the development of the base. He ordered the construction of 8 batteries with 32 field guns and 5 mortars as defense against the Turks. 1783 was a pivotal year for the development of a new naval base. In January, the government appointed Vice Admiral Fedot Kolokchev to conduct a more detailed survey of Akhtiyar and determine if it could be used as a naval base for the Azov and Dniester flotillas, soon to be called the Black Sea Fleet. Kolokchev returned to St. Petersburg and left Rear Admiral Thomas Mackenzie as commander of the Black Sea Fleet. Scottish by birth, Mackenzie made an enormous contribution to the development of Sevastopol and its industry. Construction proceeded quickly. Workers used the vast resources of the Inkerman quarries to produce lime, bricks, and tiles. Dozens of barracks buildings rose along the bay, and in the fall of 1783, 20 vessels were stationed there. On February 10, 1784, by decree of Empress Catherine, the new port and settlement was officially named Sevastopol. The name means magnificent city, worthy of respect and worship. In 1804, the Russian government officially declared Sevastopol the main military base in the Black Sea. 2 lengthy sieges within a 90-year period turned Sevastopol into a symbol of courage and perseverance. The city became the focal point of the Crimean War, fought between the Russian Empire and the alliance of the Ottoman Empire, the United Kingdom, and France. At the Battle of Alma River in September of 1854, the combined Ottoman, British, and French forces launched unimaginative frontal assaults against the entrenched Russians and forced them to retreat only thanks to their superior firepower. Fighting a long way from home with meager cavalry, the Allies tried to launch a pursuit, and the remnants of the Russian army reached safety at Sevastopol. 1 month later, during the Battle of Balaclava, the British mounted another frontal assault against well-prepared artillery batteries. It was the charge of the Light Cavalry Brigade, one of the saddest chapters of the Crimean War. After the war, it was transformed into a romantic tale of courage. But the truth is that the Light Brigade's charge was the result of a misunderstood order that caused 278 casualties. A frontal assault against well-defended positions violates the most basic rules of war, and yet in 1941 the Germans launched similar frontal assaults against well-prepared Soviet defenses. After the breakthrough at Perekop, the Germans failed to seize Sevastopol quickly, just like the Allies had failed after the Battle of Alma, leading to the second siege of the city's history. Until the German attack in 1941, the fortifications of Sevastopol were either in a continual state of improvement or neglected decay. The city's defenses were oriented towards the sea to protect the base from an attack by ships or amphibious landings. Over the years, the city spread its boundaries, but in essence continued to lie between 2 bays, Quarantine and South Bay. Akhtiyar Bay was later renamed Sevastopol Bay. It's about 7 kilometers long and up to 1,600 meters wide. The bay's access to the sea is protected by 2 spits of land, Cape Alexander on the south and Cape Constantine on the north. The Chorna, or Black River, flows into the bay at its eastern end near Inkerman. Sevastopol Bay is bordered by hills to the north, south, and west. A series of ravines plunge down from the plateaus into the bay. The mountain ranges and plateaus are separated by narrow river valleys. The Kacha River Valley is at the extremity of the 1941 fortress perimeter. The heights around Sevastopol were fortified before and during the Crimean War. Most of the fortifications were upgraded and used in 1941, but thanks to the terrain around the city, Sevastopol was already a formidable fortress, even without any permanent fortifications. Tsar Paul I allowed the defenses to deteriorate until he was deposed by Alexander I in 1801, who ordered the construction of more batteries and forts. 10 new coastal batteries were built from 1805 to 1812. Some of them were protected by earthworks and could technically be called forts. Battery 10 in particular had its own defenses protecting its rear and is known to this day as Quarantine Fort. The entrance to the bay was guarded from the north side by 3 forts, 2 of which exist to this day and are open to tourists. At the center of this line was a citadel called North Fort. During the Crimean War, all of these forts together had a garrison of 3,900 men. In 1831, a plan was drawn up to build a chain of landward fortifications connected by a defensive wall. The landward defenses were unfinished by the time the Crimean War began, but construction continued even during the long siege. The British and French employed ironclad warships for the first time against the Sevastopol fortifications, but the Russian coastal batteries managed to inflict heavy damage on the Allied fleet, forcing some of the ships to withdraw. The Black Sea Fleet retreated to Sevastopol and remained there until the end of the war. On the ground, the siege began with an outbreak of disease hitting the Allies, a combination of dysentery and cholera. 10 months later, the victorious Allies took 867 captured guns with them when they left. Some of them were used by the British to arm the fortress of Gibraltar, and the city lay in ruins for the next 20 years, but the defenses were not completely destroyed. A new crisis with Turkey in 1876 prompted the Russians to rebuild their armed forces in Crimea. During the intervening years, a new generation of guns with rifled steel barrels was introduced, and by 1877 the fortress had a total of 62 guns. In the 1880s, concrete was introduced and modifications were made to the coastal batteries. These crews were now protected by concrete parapets, while the guns themselves were placed on open concrete platforms. The batteries were also equipped with generators to power searchlights, ventilation, and interior lighting. The arms race in the years leading up to the First World War led to a renewed emphasis on making improvements to Sevastopol. The range of battleship guns of the major powers increased to 20 kilometers, and new destroyers with increased speed and armament potentially rendered the guns of Sevastopol obsolete. In 1913, a new program was launched that included the construction of batteries along the southwest coast. This led to an expansion of the landward defenses to cover the flanks of the expanded front. 2 of these new coastal batteries were batteries number 30 and 35, with their powerful battleship turrets. Today, they're commonly known as Maxim Gorky I and Maxim Gorky II. The Russian Civil War caused more damage to Sevastopol. When the White Army left the peninsula, they gutted the fortress, taking everything of value with them, including construction equipment and most of the guns. A commission of the new Soviet Red Army inspected the coastal batteries in 1925 and determined that Sevastopol was in no condition to successfully repel an enemy bombardment from the sea. The coastal batteries were only capable of defending the harbor and guarding against approach of warships armed with similar short-range artillery. The Black Sea Fleet wasn't able to protect the city either, as it was outclassed by modern European naval forces. Urgent measures needed to be taken to fix these problems. In the years prior to the Second World War, the city of Sevastopol expanded and was filled with modern conveniences found in a typical Soviet city. Bakeries, wineries, fish processing plants, and other industries sprang up. As war approached, an argument arose regarding how to defend the naval base from a land attack. The question remained unsolved both theoretically and practically until after the war broke out. In other words, Sevastopol was prepared to defend itself only from an attack by sea. Defense against an airborne or amphibious attack was bolstered after Germany's use of airborne troops in the Low Countries and Crete. This sent a loud message to the Naval Command and resulted in plans for an upgrade to coastal defense equipment and the reorganization of naval forces. In late summer 1940, the coastal defense was organized to include naval infantry regiments. The new plan included the construction of a defensive line 20 kilometers out from the city, consisting of bunkers armed with machine guns and anti-tank guns. The project didn't provide for a continuous line of fortifications, however. Instead, strong points were built along the main roads and rail lines leading to the city. Trenches, minefields, and barbed wire obstacles were placed between the strongpoints. Moreover, changes to the defense plan were made even as the Germans were fighting their way into Crimea. By November 1, 1941, 2 additional lines had been constructed. The rear line ran from 3 to 6 kilometers from the city and was completed on September 15th. The main line was 8 to 12 kilometers from the city and had a length of 35 kilometers. And the outer line was 15 to 20 kilometers from the city. These 3 lines had a total of 82 bunkers, equipped with various anti-tank guns and 214 machine guns. Because of the constant change of plans, none of them were ready to firmly repel an attacker who was swiftly descending on Sevastopol. The strategic importance of Sevastopol and the wider Crimea has not diminished with time. If anything, it's intensified. Whoever controls Crimea has 360-degree power projection at his fingertips, north into Ukraine, east into the Caucasus, south into Asia Minor, or west into the Balkans. The current phase in Sevastopol's history began with the events in 2014. Following political upheaval in Ukraine, Russian forces moved to seize control of the peninsula. Russia's takeover of Crimea is often described as a perfect example of hybrid warfare. Although the Russian army has experience with amphibious operations in the region, a conventional beach landing was unnecessary because the Russian army had already troops stationed legally in Sevastopol. They were soon reinforced by airborne and special forces units that landed on captured airfields. Sevastopol has since been heavily fortified with modern air defenses and coastal missile systems, while the entrance to the harbor is protected by no less than 6 layers of nets and floating booms. Crimea played a critical role when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February of 2022. Russian forces used the peninsula as a staging ground for operations into southern Ukraine along the Black Sea coast. Airfields, naval bases, and logistics hubs in Crimea enabled sustained offensive operations, underscoring the peninsula's value as a forward operating base. However, the war also demonstrated how modern technology can challenge even historically secure strongholds. Ukrainian forces have systematically targeted the Black Sea Fleet using a combination of domestically developed anti-ship missiles as well as increasingly sophisticated naval drones. The most significant strike occurred on April 13, 2022, when Ukrainian forces fired 2 R-360 Neptune anti-ship cruise missiles against the cruiser Moskva, the flagship of the Black Sea Fleet. The missiles triggered an ammunition explosion, causing severe damage and ultimately sinking the ship. The cruiser is the largest Russian warship to be sunk in wartime since the end of World War II, and the first Russian flagship sunk since 1905. It was the beginning of a sustained campaign of naval drones and missile attacks that allowed Ukraine to achieve a broader naval victory in the Black Sea.
Yes!
Today, the city faces what might be described as a third siege, one defined by 21st century warfare, conducted through precision strikes with drones and long-range missiles and cyber attacks.
Вон он идет, Дим, идет! Вон он, над лесом! Ебать! Ебать, они тут хуярят! Есть! Есть, нахуй! Есть, нахуй!
Смотри, бля. Хуярят, как, блядь. Вот это, блядь. И о каком сезоне в Крыму, блядь, говорить, нахуй. Как курортник попадет на море, если тут, блядь, все вот так вот 200 километров вот в таких окопах, блядь. Это ж пиздец.
Все, это хана.
Ебать! Вова, летит! Летит! Летит, как твою рот! Да дай команду нахуй! Ебать! Еще летит! Еще спереди вон! Сюда!
Сука, взорвали, блядь! За полдня в Севастополе 3-я воздушная тревога. У меня не работает мобильная связь. Я не могу дозвониться свекрови и узнать, где она находится сейчас, потому что мой ребенок у нее. Я не могу работать и не могу учиться, потому что у меня нет интернета.
Я ебаться не хотел. Мы куда приедем, везде обстрел, блядь. Смотри. Бля. А что там за горой? Там, наверное, какая-то база, да? Там по-любому. Везде в позицию накрыли, ебать его.
While subsequent Russian naval losses have not been as significant as the Moskva, the Black Sea Fleet has again been forced to retreat and seek shelter elsewhere in the region, and even then, the fleet is not immune from attack. The story of Sevastopol is ultimately one of repetition as much as change. Its geographic advantages remain as decisive today as they were in the 18th century. Yet the means by which it's defended and attacked have evolved dramatically. Where once massive stone fortifications and coastal gun batteries defined the fortress, today's defenses rely on radar, air defense systems, and electronic warfare. And where once fleets clashed in open battle, now unseen drones and precision-guided weapons shape the balance of power.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.